The rain had poured all night in the bustling city, washing away the dust but leaving behind an unusual chill that seeped into every heart. In one of the grandest mansions of the elite, preparations were underway for what was supposed to be a perfect wedding. But the groom, Alexander Carter, young, powerful, and one of the most feared CEOs in the business world, didn't see it that way. He was standing in front of the mirror in his dressing room, tugging at the knot of his tie with irritation. His sharp jaw clenched, and his cold gray eyes carried not excitement, but resentment. For Alexander, this wedding wasn't love, it was a trap. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, his voice dripping with anger. "They think they can fool me into marrying someone I don't even know. Someone they call ugly." His best man and childhood friend, Daniel, tried to calm him down. "Alex, you know this marriage is about business. Your grandfather wanted this merger between families. Just go through with it. The veil will hide everything, and by tomorrow, you'll have secured the deal." Alexander scoffed. "I don't care about the deal anymore. What I hate is being tricked. Marrying a woman I've never seen, never spoken to. What kind of nonsense is this? And if she's what they say, if she's hideous, they think I'll just accept it." He slammed his fist on the table, making Daniel flinch. Everyone knew Alexander was ruthless in the boardroom and equally terrifying in personal life. But tonight, fate had other plans for him, plans that would unravel the steel walls around his heart. As the ceremony began, whispers filled the luxurious hall. Guests were curious, gossiping about the bride who never showed her face, always hidden under layers of veil and secrecy. Rumors said she was scarred, others whispered she was deformed, and some cruel voices laughed that she was cursed with a face too ugly for the world. But no one dared question the Carter family. The bride's identity remained hidden, and Alexander, despite his fury, walked down the aisle with a storm brewing inside him. The bride stood silently, her posture graceful despite the weight of the whispers around her. Her hands, though delicate, trembled slightly as she held the bouquet. Beneath the veil, her eyes glistened with unshed tears. She already knew what people thought of her. She had grown up hearing the word, ugly, whispered behind her back, seeing doors close in her face, and watching people turn away before even giving her a chance. But she had agreed to this marriage for reasons that went beyond herself. Her family had debts, her younger siblings needed schooling, and this marriage was the only way to protect them. She didn't want to marry a man like Alexander, cold, arrogant, and feared, but she had no choice. Sacrifice was the story of her life. When the vows were exchanged, Alexander's voice was hard, as if he were signing a contract rather than pledging himself to someone. He didn't look at her. He didn't hold her hand longer than necessary. For him, this was a show, a business deal, nothing more. But then came the moment everyone had been waiting for, the lifting of the veil. The priest announced it, and Alexander reluctantly reached forward. His fingers hovered for a moment, as if he didn't want to touch her, then with a sharp motion, he lifted the veil. The room fell into complete silence. What Alexander saw made his breath hitch. His eyes widened, and for the first time in years, he was speechless. She was breathtaking. Her face wasn't ugly, scarred, or deformed, it was luminous. Her skin glowed like porcelain, her eyes were the color of emeralds, shimmering with both strength and vulnerability, and her lips carried the softest curve of grace. She was stunning, in a way that no one in the room could deny. Gasps echoed through the hall. The same guests who mocked her now stared in shock, some even jealous. Daniel nudged Alexander, whispering, "Looks like you've been tricked, but in the best way." But Alexander wasn't listening. He was staring at her, completely undone. Her name was Isabella. And at that moment, Alexander realized he had judged her before even knowing her. The anger he carried melted into confusion. Something inside him shifted, something he had long buried under arrogance and pride. Yet, Isabella's eyes didn't sparkle with joy. They carried pain, a pain deeper than he could understand. She didn't look at him as a bride looks at her husband. Instead, she looked at him as if he were just another burden she had to bear. The reception was lavish, filled with music, dancing, and laughter. But Isabella stayed quiet, distant, her smile faint and polite. Alexander couldn't take his eyes off her, but she avoided his gaze. Later that night, when they were finally alone in their new home, Alexander broke the silence. "Why didn't you tell anyone? Why let them think you were ugly?" Isabella's laugh was soft, bitter. Because it didn't matter. People believe what they want. They always have. Sometimes it's easier to let them think the worst than to fight endlessly. Alexander frowned. For the first time, he saw beyond her beauty. He saw strength, sacrifice, and wounds she carried silently. "You're not what I expected," he admitted. "And you're exactly what I expected," she replied, her voice steady. Cold, angry, proud. "You don't care who you marry, as long as it benefits you." Her words cut him deeper than he expected. He wanted to deny it, but he couldn't. Because she was right. Days turned into weeks. Their marriage began as nothing more than a contract, but something unexpected happened. Alexander found himself drawn to Isabella, not just her beauty, but her kindness. She treated the household staff with respect, helped the poor quietly, and carried herself with dignity. One night, he followed her secretly and discovered her visiting an orphanage, donating food and teaching children to read. She didn't do it for recognition, she did it because she cared. It shook him. How can someone who's suffered so much still give so much love? He wondered. Slowly, Alexander began changing. He started softening, not just toward Isabella, but toward the world. He found himself wanting to protect her, to know her, to deserve her. But Isabella, scarred by years of rejection, kept her heart guarded. She had seen men like him before, men who only valued power. Could she really trust him? Their story wasn't easy. They fought, argued, and misunderstood each other countless times. But every time, Alexander kept coming back, trying harder, showing her that he wasn't the same man anymore. The turning point came when Isabella's past caught up with her. A former suitor, who had once rejected her cruelly, returned and tried to expose her family's struggles, threatening to ruin her reputation. Alexander stepped in, fiercely defending her in public. In front of everyone, he declared, "This woman is my wife. The strongest, most beautiful woman I have ever known. Anyone who dares insult her, insults me." It was the first time Isabella saw sincerity in his eyes. Tears filled her vision as she realized he wasn't just protecting her for appearances, he meant every word. And for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this man who once despised the idea of marrying her could truly love her. Their marriage, once a cold contract, blossomed into something real. They learned to heal each other's wounds, to replace bitterness with love, and to build a life not on rumors or appearances, but on trust. In the end, Alexander realized he hadn't been tricked into marrying an ugly bride. He had been blessed with a woman who taught him the true meaning of love, sacrifice, and beauty that went far deeper than skin. And Isabella, the girl once whispered about and mocked, found her place, not just as a CEO's wife, but as the queen of his heart. Because sometimes, the veil we lift doesn't just reveal a face, it reveals a destiny. The days after the wedding were strange, filled with silent meals and guarded conversations. Alexander, who once never doubted his authority in any room, found himself second-guessing his every word around Isabella. She wasn't like the women he had dated before, those who laughed at his jokes, admired his wealth, or feared his sharp tongue. Isabella remained calm, poised, and unbothered by his arrogance. At first, it infuriated him. He was Alexander Carter, after all. Every woman either envied or desired him. Yet his wife, the woman he had married under protest, seemed immune to his charm. Instead, she spent her time in the library, writing letters, or visiting the less fortunate. One evening, Alexander returned home from a tense board meeting. His company was under fire from a rival corporation, rumors spreading that Carter Enterprises was corrupt. He stormed inside, slamming his briefcase on the table. To his surprise, Isabella was waiting. She had prepared tea and food, not with the intention of impressing him, but simply because she knew he hadn't eaten all day. "You should take care of yourself," she said softly, her emerald eyes meeting his. "A kingdom may be powerful, but if the king is too tired to defend it, it will fall." The words disarmed him. No one spoke to him like that, wise, caring, but not submissive. He sat down, reluctantly sipping the tea, and for the first time, he felt seen. That night marked a shift. Slowly, Isabella began to occupy spaces in his life that Alexander never thought he would share. She asked questions about his business, not to judge, but to understand. She offered perspectives that surprised him, sometimes even challenging him, but always with thoughtfulness. At first, Alexander resisted. He wasn't used to anyone questioning his decisions. But soon, he realized Isabella's insights weren't just clever, they were right. She saw angles he didn't, reminded him of humanity where he only saw profit. One afternoon, when Alexander was meeting with his executives, Isabella entered the boardroom to deliver documents he had left behind. The men in the room exchanged skeptical glances, whispering about the hidden bride. Some had heard the rumors, mocking her appearance. But as she walked in, calm and graceful, their whispers died. Isabella didn't boast or flaunt, she simply handed Alexander the papers with a serene smile. The executives, stunned by her beauty and composure, quickly shifted their opinions. Alexander noticed. He noticed how the room quieted, how respect replaced doubt. And deep down, he felt a strange swell of pride. She is my wife, he thought. And she deserves to be seen. But not everyone shared that respect. One evening, at a high society gala, Alexander and Isabella made their first public appearance as husband and wife. The chandeliers sparkled, violins played, and laughter filled the air. Yet as they entered, whispers once again began to circle. A woman in a shimmering gown sneered loudly, "So this is the bride they said was too ugly to show her face. How disappointing, it's just a trick of makeup and lighting." Isabella heard it. She stiffened but didn't react. Years of insults had trained her to stay silent. But Alexander, standing beside her, clenched his jaw. He turned sharply toward the woman, his voice cold but commanding. "Careful with your words. My wife doesn't need tricks, she outshines every soul in this room without effort." Gasps spread through the crowd. No one had ever seen Alexander defend anyone like that, let alone with such intensity. He took Isabella's hand, guiding her to the dance floor, and in that moment, she felt something shift inside her. For the first time, he wasn't just a husband in name, he was her shield. But love stories aren't built without storms. As weeks turned into months, Alexander faced betrayal within his company. His rival had planted spies in his office, leaking information. One night, confidential files went missing, and suspicion quickly fell on Isabella. After all, she had been seen near his office, asking about business. Alexander confronted her, anger clouding his judgment. "Did you give them information? Were you part of this from the start?" Isabella's face turned pale. Her voice shook, but her eyes stayed firm. "After everything I've endured, after everything I've done for this family, you think I would betray you?" The hurt in her voice pierced him, but Alexander's pride wouldn't let him back down. "I don't know what to think anymore." Isabella didn't argue. She simply walked away, retreating to her room, tears falling silently. For the first time since their marriage, Alexander realized he had broken something fragile, her trust. The truth, however, soon revealed itself. It wasn't Isabella, it was Daniel, Alexander's best friend, who had been feeding information to the rival, driven by jealousy and greed. When Alexander discovered it, rage consumed him. He confronted Daniel, nearly beating him, but the guilt that followed was worse than any betrayal. He had doubted Isabella. That night, he entered her room. She was sitting by the window, staring at the stars, her face streaked with tears. "Isabella," his voice cracked, something rare for a man like him. "I was wrong. I should never have doubted you. You've given me nothing but truth, and I repaid you with suspicion." She didn't answer immediately. Silence stretched, heavy and painful. Finally, she whispered, "Trust is fragile, Alexander. You can break it in a second, but it takes years to rebuild." Her words cut deeper than a knife. For the first time, Alexander, a man who conquered industries without blinking, felt powerless. And so began his redemption. He worked tirelessly, not just to win her forgiveness, but to prove he was worthy of her. He accompanied her to the orphanage, supported her causes, and even began spending time with the children she adored. Slowly, Isabella's guarded heart began to soften again. But the final test came months later, when Isabella fell gravely ill. The stress, the pressure, and years of silent suffering took a toll on her body. She collapsed one evening, sending Alexander into panic. For days, he stayed by her side, refusing to leave, his powerful empire momentarily forgotten. He held her hand, whispering, "You can't leave me now. Not when I finally understand what love is. Not when I finally know I can't live without you." Through fevered dreams, Isabella heard him. And when she finally opened her eyes, weak but alive, Alexander wept openly for the first time in his life. In that fragile moment, Isabella realized he had truly changed. And so, against all odds, their marriage blossomed, not from contracts or appearances, but from trials, sacrifices, and a love forged in fire. Years later, when people spoke of Alexander Carter, they no longer described him as the ruthless CEO. They spoke of a man who once thought he was tricked into marrying an ugly bride but instead found the greatest treasure of his life. And when they spoke of Isabella, they didn't whisper rumors of ugliness. They spoke of a woman whose beauty was undeniable, but whose heart was the reason an empire changed forever. Because in the end, it wasn't the veil that had hidden her face. It was the world's prejudice. And when it lifted, everything changed.